All right,
Hey everyone, how you going?
we are live. Hopefully,
Woohoo!
I feel a lot more control with this version than with Facebook. At least I get like prompts and know what's going on, so that's nice.
Have you shared the link into Facebook?
I have. It is in Facebook right now. We've already got people joining us for the chat. Hi guys, how you going?
Fab. Hello.
So yeah, it's getting the hang of this newfangled technology stuff.
I've really got to get the hang of remembering to wear glasses.
I don't think I can make it bigger for you at the moment either.
No.
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
Oh well, you get that. I'll just have to chat and have nothing to do with responding to people.
That's
Although
okay.
I think that's Matt Crosby that
That
I
is
can
Matt
see
Crosby.
says hello. Hey Matt, how you going? So, interesting week.
There is that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, before we get started, I do want to, I guess, mention the fact that half of Western Australia is on fire at the moment.
Yeah, and the other half, all of us is on lockdown.
Well, only Metro and
All the important
Peel.
bits.
So we've got, half of Western Australia is on fire, and then I think there's 2 cyclones going through WA as well. I know that there's a fair few of the OBSEC community, OBSEC family, that have been impacted by the fires. So I guess want to say that we're thinking of you and hope that everybody's staying safe. We're all hoping that we're going to get some rain. I know they're predicting, not predicting, whatever they do. Forecasting, that's what I'm after. Forecasting rain for Saturday. So I'm really hoping they're wrong and perhaps we get some tonight. Hoping that the wind dies down, that we can hear howling at the moment. And
Yeah, it's pretty bad out there at the moment.
yeah. So, as always, you are more important than your models.
I've seen several people already suggest that they can claim their armies for smoke damage.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that one. And I will come back to having a joke in a minute. I do just want to say you are more important than your models, and please remember to stay safe and make smart choices. I know that there are a few people who have evacuated, and some have gone to evacuation centres, and some have gone to
Airbnbs and all sorts.
Some are staying with mother-in-laws. And my heart really goes out to you, John. So, and I'm obviously being a little bit flippant with that, but yeah, I just think that we need to start by acknowledging that and saying that we hope that you guys are staying, and girls and families, and staying safe.
Got a couple of other people joining us. Marcus, how you going? Luke, nice to have you guys joining us. So between the fires and then the lockdown, it's been a weird week.
It has been a weird week. I'm quite liking this because we're a tiny little picture up in the top corner, and there's all these kind of
analytics
going on, and it's really lovely to be away from seeing my face in a Zoom meeting.
Well,
I'm so over Zoom meetings with everything that's gone on in the eastern states and UK and US. Honestly, I feel for you having to sit through endless Zoom meetings.
A lot of people are moving to Microsoft Teams.
Oh God, we've got that going on as well.
We've
got Microsoft Teams, we've got emails, we've got Zoom meetings, we've got WhatsApp chats going left, right and centre.
Nah, pass.
I used to have nightmares that I'd accidentally become a nun. Now the thought of it makes kind of...
Luke says, except for flooding in Kalgoorlie. They always have to try and one-up the metro, don't you?
Far out. Well, I hope you're coping with the floods as well, Luke.
Yeah.
If you could send some of that water perhaps down to where the fires are, that'd be awesome.
Hi, John. How you going? So it definitely has been an interesting week so far, and it's only Wednesday.
It is.
We were talking today about what the lockdown and obviously all the mask stuff might mean for future events. Mm-hmm. Because while we're trying to stay positive and optimistic that the lockdown will hopefully end at the end of the week, I'm assuming that we'll end up with masks being something of a norm for at least a couple of weeks after that.
Yeah, look, most definitely. I think the press conference today, so there's been 1 case of COVID in Western Australia, and the whole of Perth Metro and Peel region have been closed down we're on 5 days lockdown. And then they've basically said today that we need 14 days of 0 cases. So we've had 3 days of 0 cases. We need another 11
See,
days of...
I reckon they'll start counting it from Friday, not from Monday.
Okay. Anyway, so we've had however many days. It's got to get to 14, and we'll have
Yeah.
other restrictions in place until those 14 days are over, which potentially means that we'll be seeing masks. We don't know what those restrictions will be.
No, we don't.
But we'll potentially be seeing masks as one of those restrictions for the immediate future for Western Australia.
So we've already started talking about the possibility of some OPSEC masks, if you're interested in a branded one. I've already put out some inquiries. And
I'm not 100% sure how I feel about wearing a target on my face.
a little target on that side.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
I'm not sure about wearing that to my work.
Or like a biohazard one, like the...
I'm definitely not wearing that to my work.
Lachlan suggested the Nurgle symbol instead, which you might be able to get past people with because they don't know what it is, and you might get some interesting responses from people who do know what it is. That's a way of weeding out the nerds in the local community that maybe don't know about us. You put the Nurgle symbol on the front when they come up and they tell you what it is and you don't recognise them.
Bit like the secret handshakes from
Yes.
the Masons.
Hey Richard, how you going? So
Now, Richard specifically requested that we talk about My Little Pony tonight.
look, if he's talking about the Saddle Club, which is the nickname that's been given to a couple of the armies that came to Masters, that makes some sense.
No, I think we should talk about My Little Pony. He wasn't specific, therefore.
Have you seen the My Little Pony armies for 40k?
Oh, God.
I'll have to show you that off air.
I
'cause-
have seen them, but why does everything have to be about 40k? Can't we just talk about My Little Pony?
No. I do want to talk about one thing on the stream while I remember it before we do anything else. So, for what everyone else can see at the moment, we've obviously got our new frame situated around us. And because I've been a little bit lazy and not tried to adapt it because I'm still mucking about with the streaming software for the games, obviously on the right-hand side of the screen, there's kind of a grey space at the moment. I'm wondering whether I can put the chat into that.
Oh.
So basically doing like a screen capture of the live chat screen on the, like in the other tab.
Do you understand how long my last 3.5 days have been?
Well, I'm just thinking for everyone,
Yeah, that's great.
for everyone following at home or
Could
watching
we-
this after the fact, I thought that might be quite cool. So I'm going to try and work that out during the week.
Okay, thought you wanted me to try and work that out now.
No.
That's not going to happen.
I know how to do it. It's just a case of screen capturing that little bit and making that as another insert. It'll be fine.
And Princess Celestia is better than Rainbow Dash, actually, Richard, just so you know.
So if you haven't already joined the OPSEC
Yeah,
Gamers
actually,
group,
for comments like that, it might help to know what the comments are rather than me just randomly, yeah.
so I thought that could be a good inclusion to that screen for these live streams so you can see the chat happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll work that out for the next one.
Upset Gamers Group.
Yeah, if you haven't joined it already, I think everyone in the chat at the moment has. You're more than welcome to invite any other friends who are interested in gaming in Western Australia. It's not just about 40k or it's just about our events for that matter. It's about
Gaming in
Western Australia. I posted 2 things over the last couple of days off the back of some other inquiries that have been going on in other parts of the world or other parts of Australia around team events, around 3D printing and all that sort of stuff. And I just wanted to talk about both of those very quickly.
There's a beautiful line that just springs to mind around stirring up a hornet's nest.
No. The first one wasn't so bad. The second one wasn't stirring up a hornet's nest. It was kicking the anthill over, dumping a bunch of gasoline down the hole, setting it on fire with a flamethrower, and then watching a giant mutant ant come out of the hole and try and bite me in the ass.
Well, I think that may be blowing it somewhat out of proportion. Okay.
So we posted up something because I had seen a bunch of live stuff that was happening. I'm in... Josh says you can definitely do it. It's pretty easy depending on what software you're using. OBS, Josh. And like I said, I'm 90% sure I can do it pretty
We
straightforward.
can do it. You're right. It is very simple. Just not...
Not live. Not what we're
And
doing
not
now.
right this second.
So yeah, I saw something commented with Queensland are obviously running. They've been running some small team events. I say small teams of 4, around 60 attendees for the last 12 months or so now. And Victoria are about to kick off their first one, I think in May, in a similar format, teams of 4. and South Australia are looking to do the same at some, whether it's later this year or early next year, I don't know. But I'm in a lot of these groups because of the TOs, and we try and keep an eye on what's going on in each part of the country. And one of the things that was raised in South Australia was, hey, since Victoria are doing 4s and Queensland are doing 4s, we should do 4s so that it's a countrywide standard. And I probably didn't word it especially well in the gamers group.
That's unlike you.
Because, as you've rightly pointed out yesterday when we were doing some other recordings and stuff, there's a lot that goes on in my brain that maybe doesn't come out of my mouth.
Okay, I definitely did not point out that there is a lot that goes on in your brain. At no point did I say that.
Like today, I was trying to set something else up for you for the podcast. And I went, I'll just do this, this, and this. And you went, no, you've missed steps there. So I published a question basically saying, hey, what does everyone feel about team sizes for WATC? And that got into 89 separate comments before I went, I'm going to bring up another topic and see what happens.
Yeah, look, I think the general consensus was we don't want to go
back to 4. Even 5 was largely negative because people were going, well, we have to cut a friend out of the group.
Yeah, and we'd spoken about that before, and I definitely agree with that. I definitely think that I don't want to see us going back to less than 6 because that's what we've been doing, and there has been a lot of great groups and teams formed, and we're about community, and I think that WATC has given us an opportunity. I realise that I'm looking into the camera on here because we're supposed to look at the camera and it's the wrong camera, so I'm going to start looking at that one, sorry. WATC has given us a great opportunity to be able to grow the community in different ways and be able to create stronger friendship groups that didn't exist a couple of years ago. And I think that, we obviously started off seeing Toy Soldier Cartel, and then it went into Tabletop Mafia, then it's just blown exponentially. Yeah, probably shouldn't talk so much with my hands. It's grown exponentially since there, and I think that some of those groups were friendship groups that already existed, but then you look at something like Snake Eyes Squad, which is really quite a diverse group.
Well, they formed for WATC because a group of them wanted to play and didn't have a team to join.
Yeah.
And now, I think 3 years later, after they played the first year, and then we had 2 more now as Snake Eye Squad.
Yeah. So that not only creates these kind of smaller groups and stronger friendships where people are getting together and having that opportunity to socialise and connect and build those social networks, which is so incredibly important. With my mental health hat on, social connections and social networks is such a huge thing for reducing social isolation and reducing feelings of anxiety and stress and depression and all of those things. So fantastic. It also creates rivalries in a, hopefully, generally a positive fashion. And so to then have to look at potentially going to groups, or now you need to work out which one of your group are you going to drop, really doesn't do the kinds of things for the community that we want to see happen here and that we've been trying to work towards building for the last 5-6 years, almost 6 years. So it's definitely not something that I want to see. I also think there were a few points in there around the fact that we run the biggest team event in the Southern Hemisphere that we know of. There could be a big one that we haven't seen somewhere. That's definitely a possibility. So we run the biggest team event in the Southern Hemisphere. We actually have the opportunity to lead the way and to be able to show how this can work really well. And when we started with 4 players.
Yeah, we did. The first year was 4, and at the end of it went, no, there needs to be more than 4 because the matchup process just didn't feel like it did anything, and it unfairly advantaged one team at the start of the process.
And I think that there's the potential that could be what's happening over in Eastern States, that they're starting off with those smaller teams, because actually it's quite daunting to come up with a team of 6.
I was like speaking to the organiser for the VTC, Matt Morrisoli, yesterday. He was saying to me that part of the reason they've started with 4 is literally community driven. We want to try and get as many people out playing a team event, seeing how cool a team event is, and getting the community back together again.
Yeah, which is what we did as well. It feels easier to get together with 3 friends or to try and join a group if you don't necessarily have a gaming circle, to find 3 other people to join with, as opposed to I need to find 5 other people to join with. Whereas when you get started with 4, you can then add another 2 the following couple of years.
I think the other thing is, which we kind of saw at WATC for 2020, is that teams of 4, the chances of an overlap for factions is minimised because you can kind of be a bit picky about who those 3 other people are to make sure that you're all getting to play what you want to play. When you start getting out to 5s and 6s and more, you start going, oh, hang on a minute, does someone else have another army? And we saw a bit of that. There was one...
And I think that, when you're just starting with a team event, it's, oh, well, we've already got those covered, so we need to try and find somebody who plays Grey Knights or, whatever. Are people going to be prepared to go and buy another army or, do what needs to be done in order to create that dynamic with those 6 separate factions?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there were a lot of...
I've got one more thing I want to add.
Go for it.
We talk a lot, and because it's your favourite thing to talk about, but we talk a lot about not chasing meta, and that felt a little bit like that, like this to me as well, that there's this idea that the rest of Australia is going to be doing this, and so we should be chasing that and doing that as well.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the fact that actually you have an opportunity when you're playing whatever army it is to work out how that's going to work best for you and what you can do and how you can adapt your army to suit your style of play rather than just picking something straight off the internet. And that's kind of how this feels. 6 players works for us. And, we've talked about the possibility of adding a 7th player or adding an 8th player to possibly work towards having something that's similar to the WTC. But to go to 4 players just because that would align us with the rest of Australia when we've been doing this for the last 5 years doesn't sit especially well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to find the comments that... So there's a lot of comments around either 5 or 7 players just to make it so that you don't have a situation where you've got a clear winner for wins versus losses.
Ah, right, yeah.
Which I kind of can see an argument for. We've got Tom. I haven't talked to you about this either, but I'm going to talk about it now live anyway because I like doing this for you.
When we do this in the podcast, at least there's the option that we can go back and
edit
do
things. I always like leaving them
I know, but I like to at least know.
So, Tom makes a suggestion about doing random matchups.
Yes.
Now, I'm not suggesting doing that for WATC, so for those of you who've just had a minor heart attack, for me thinking about doing that for WATC, no, I'm not suggesting that. What I am thinking about...
Okay. My wine is all the way over there.
Yep.
Finish my tea now. I feel like I'm going to need that.
What I am thinking about doing is doing a couple of one-day team events in 4s with random pairings.
A couple of them?
Yep. Do 3 team events a year, 2 little ones, and then WATC. So...
Do you think that might dilute the...
Maybe it's one. Maybe it's one and then WATC. But I at least want to give Tom's suggestion a try once in a controlled environment where we go, cool, we're going to have no more than 16 teams of 4. And
he's saying that, just so you know, I haven't capped that at 16, which means it will be bigger than that.
And do one day...
If people want to come, if we build it, you may come.
Do 4 games one day. The reason I picked 4 games as 16 teams is it works out to be a perfect winner.
5 games, 32 games.
5 games in one day. Yeah, good luck with that.
They're doing it next weekend.
Yeah, and they can, we're going to be there all day, but I'm not thinking about playing. Jesus.
If I get a puppy, I'm playing.
You're not getting a puppy, so it's fine. Everything's closed.
If I get a puppy, then somebody else is going to need to come to Iron Man because I'm going to need an opponent.
You need an army. Good luck with that. You're not borrowing mine.
I'll borrow Lachlan's. It's all good.
Half of that's mine.
You gave it away.
So I do like the idea of trying out that random pairing process where... so I'm not saying do it at the tables. I'm saying that, so round 1, you and I are the captains. Mm-hmm. We have our players listed as players 1 to 4. And they stay listed as 1 to 4 for the whole weekend. Mm-hmm. As the TO then comes out and goes, cool, round 1, my team's playing your team. And A1 plays B3, A2 plays B1, A3 plays B4, and A4 plays B2. So everyone in the room has that same combination. So it is, and it'll obviously change each round, but it means that there's a little, you're not relying on teams going, how do we figure out what's random? You've got to...
Well, Tom's suggestion is literally pulling a name out of a hat.
You've been to our events, right? You understand the pre-game stuff that goes on with some of the teams and some of the like singles for that matter. I think if we control
I've been to one or two of our events.
So that's the reason I thought, if we control that and go and put it up on a...
Oh my goodness. You have
Bugger
not
off.
been hungry or thirsty all night and now suddenly we're on a live stream and he's been in a half a dozen
It's
times.
because there's a bag of sweets over there. Anyway, would that be something that everyone would be interested in actually participating in and trying out? I thought that was a really cool idea. The other comment that I wanted to draw some attention to is... Where is it? This one from Pete. Given that WATC is the biggest team event in the Southern Hemisphere, I could care less what the East are doing. Odds versus evens...
couldn't care less.
Odds versus evens, I don't care. The matchup process is a huge part and it's an amazing differentiator, which rewards putting in the work. I agree with. This bit, though, is the bit that I want to talk
Can
about.
I just add to that? So in Tom's... You can talk about it in a second.
I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I'm going to let you talk too. I'm drinking more. I'll stop in a minute. Or talk more. Who knows? So in Tom's comment, he said that one of the things with the matchup process is that it actually unfairly advantages teams who are good at that matchup process. So you've got some teams who have been experienced over the last however many years and who can kind of understand the strategy and who know their armies and opposing armies well enough to be able to traffic light them or to be able to give a score out of 1 to 10 with how it's going to go and to be able to influence that. Whereas when we take away the matchup process, what we're actually doing is leveling that playing field and it just becomes random.
But see, I think part of any of these team events where there is a matchup process, the only way to get better at it is to do it more.
Yes, and I agree, and I think that overwhelmingly, people have said that they actually really enjoy that matchup process, and it's almost a game within a game of all of the strategy that goes into it, and also the bonding that people haven't said that, I'm projecting, but the bonding that goes into that as people have to talk through that and spend time and connect with each other in order to do that process, I think is really great as well. So I'm not saying that I agree with Tom. Well, I do agree with him. I do think it does unfairly advantage people who... It gives people an advantage if they're good at it. But the way that you get better at it is to practice or to work through it or to talk to people or to ask for help or to know that it's actually something that you could be doing.
Yeah.
So, but I just kind of wanted
Maybe
to
we
say...
can run a coaching clinic on that closer to WATC.
Well, we could, but how many times have we recorded things about it?
No, but I mean, like, it's one thing... I don't know what that looks like. I'll think about that. Yeah, this is the line from Pete. I would personally be pushing for an 8-player world team or Australian team format to really put the foot on the throat as the premier teams event in the world. Now, while he said it quite forcefully in that statement, I think the underlying message there is if we step up to the plate and go to 8 players like the Worlds, that gives us an opportunity then to kind of show that Australia has that capability to match what the rest of the world does. And I kind of like that as a thought. I don't know that... I mean, it's not going to happen for 2021, but I'm not adverse to the idea, depending on how many come this year, to looking at it for 2022. So, because 2021 will stay at 6.
Yeah. At this point in time.
No, it is. It's done. I've already written the players pack. It's done. I haven't actually. I've just copied the 2021 to 2021 and changed some of the labels.
Yeah. Look, I think that it becomes similarly to having to drop a player when you move to 8 players. So, for example, if you've got... I spoke about Snake Eyes Squad earlier, and I've just seen... I think I just saw Steve's face somewhere on one of those comments. So, when you talk about Snake Eyes Squad, they'd be potentially adding 2 players to that. And as we're getting new players coming into the community, coming into the game system, it's relatively easy to add a couple of players to that.
Yeah.
When you're looking at players who are coming up from Albany or, for example, coming up from Bunbury, where they've got 2 teams already, Bunbury's then having to look at adding on 4 extra players.
Yeah, look, there is that, obviously, when you start talking about those more isolated communities. Like, I know that Luke's trying to get a Kalgoorlie team for 2021 together, which would be awesome.
It would be absolutely fantastic.
And what I'd probably say to him is if they get 4 or 5, don't then turn around and go, we can't come, because I'm sure we'll find individual players in Perth that would quite happily join those teams so they can come and participate.
Yeah, and there are, similar to when we hosted the ANZ TC, that what it was called?
Yeah.
What was it called? When we hosted that in 2018. You'd think I'd know this. Anyway, whenever we hosted
It was
that.
2018.
Fantastic. When we
Luke's literally just saying it would make it hard for players from Albany, Bunbury, Cal, etc. You just said that.
Great minds.
The chat is catching up with us. It's fine.
So when we had the ANZ Team Championship or Team Challenge over here for 2018, and we had New Zealand come over, they couldn't field their whole team.
No, they had, I think, 5 of the 8.
Yeah, so we ended up with 3 Mercs, but those
Who
three...
were all expat New Zealanders.
Which is exactly what I was going to say. We would, I'm sure, be able to end up with something similar for looking at Kalgoorlie. There's quite a few people who have done their time in Kalgoorlie and who, you could kind of go, well, they'd be able to be Mercs to sit well within that Kalgoorlie team.
Absolutely. So there's a comment there from Tim Hales. It changes how you approach list building. You would probably find less skew lists for the he's talking about the random pairings, I assume they're looking at the timestamp.
Yes.
And Pizza Guardian says team players all fun and games until you throw a team member under the bus. Look, and to be fair, the random pairing would remove that feel bad under the bus. It would most
definitely.
But I also think that's part of the strategy.
Yeah. And I was about to say exactly the same thing. I think that when you go into a team event, you know that there are going to be times when you have no good matchup, and actually the best matchup for you is quite often the worst matchup for everybody else, because you're going to lose anyway. You may as well have the worst possible loss and give everyone else a chance to. And that is actually still helping your team do the best that they can.
Yeah. I think
taking one for the team, people.
I think we might get some more I got thrown under the bus stickers produced like we did a couple of years ago for the team. I think we did that for 2016 or 2015 for the ATC, the West Australian team. Might get a few of those made up so that you can give it to the captains, and because I've got some plans for the WATC. Like I said at the Masters, if you weren't there, the ticket prices for events after July 1st will go up slightly.
Because our costs are going up.
Yep. The hall hires never stay stagnant for too long. We've now had the same pricing on this venue for 18 months or so now. I think it'll be 2 years by the time we hit that venue, that timing. And I know that they've said to me, they've not told me what it is, but they've said to me there's a price rise coming. We'll keep that as low as we can. And because we know roughly what it costs per head, per person, per day to run any sort of event. So we will absorb as much as we can. But for the team tickets, and I was saying this to the Victoria, Queensland guys who want to come over and play, the ticket price will go up slightly because we're going to include some bits and pieces this year with the team ticket for the captains to make it a little bit easier to do pairings. So I want to do up a little deck of cards that they can then use for the pairings to make sure that it's very clear what's matching with what.
And you want a captain hat.
Yeah, we want to do a captain hat.
No, you want to do a captain hat.
Yeah. So that we know where the captains are when we have to call for briefings, or if there's a query when I get called to a table and I need to involve captains.
Hats inside are rude for men to wear, just so you know.
Look, I'll do it. What do you, like a headband with like a wavy hand on a spring? Something like that?
We've probably got, at least a dozen Christmas antler ear headbands. How about those?
We can do something.
I'm not 100% sure the captains are going to be on board with this.
Richard says teams of 8 really start to push the codexes available. No, they don't.
Does. How cool is that? You got to
They
think outside.
don't.
No, because you got to think outside the box.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
So it's not the available codexes. It's around going, well, these are the ones that we see standard. So how can we do something different?
so
That excites me.
so for Xenos,
Give me
1,
something,
2, 3,
Richard.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, it's 8. So there's 8 Xenos armies. Then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Chaos armies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 7. 7 Imperium, and then Space Marines, which once we pull Grey Knights out of that, you get 2 out of. So there's 20 something factions there. There's more than 20 available for a team of 8 to put together 8 lists.
But how many are good?
Well, and this is one of the things that we've seen at the ATC in the past, is that I like the fact that you go, cool, like the last year we went, okay, cool, we definitely want a Space Marine Battle Company, we did that. We definitely want a Necron Decurion, we did that. We definitely want this, we did that. We definitely want this. And we get to we get 5 lists in and go, oh, I don't know now. And that's where the interesting stuff happens, where teams get to be experimental and try and work together and come up with these cool new ideas that may work, may not work, and that's where the playtesting comes from. There was a year, it was the first year that Mitch came with us, I think it was 2015, and the list that he came up with when pushed into that position it was a reserve army with 2 Storm Ravens and a bunch of Death Company, and it was a 3+ rerollable, and he basically won the game turn 1, because he just deployed nothing, and then in his turn 1 he had to roll a 3, and he could reroll it. If he didn't pass it, he automatically lost. But if he passed it, he got to fly on, everyone disembark, charge, and steamroll. And when we took that to the east, everyone was looking at it going, what the hell are you guys doing? And he made it work. And I think sometimes forcing players outside of the standard creates some really dynamic opportunities.
And again, it's
Sailor's Cap is a suggestion for the head.
Again, I think it's around not necessarily chasing the meta.
Yeah.
And about thinking about what else you can do and how you can make something work.
Richard has just clarified. He said it's actually the potential for players on the same team to have multiple armies. That is also a factor.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of players who go, well, I play Space Marines. And then your opponent goes, well, I play Blood Angels, and I play Dark Angels, and I play this. Oh, it's fine. Oh, now only one of you can bring them.
Yeah.
And that is a factor. So yeah, that's a valid point. Now, the general consensus from all that was stick to teams of 6 this year, which was what we'll do. Then we started talking about 3D and recasts. Now, to give a talking point for this, I was in, I forget which group it was I think one of the competitive groups, and this guy had posted a 3D printed copy of an Adeptus Custodes model. And at first glance, just like as a...
Could you maybe turn that off? Thanks. You could have just silenced it, but anyway.
Looking at it first glance, you go, okay, look, it's a custode with a sword and shield. And it wasn't until you read the comments that he says it's 3D printed. And then I started looking at it when, okay, the helmet's not quite right. The gun's not like the gun that's mounted on the sword's not quite right. There's little bits on it that you go, if you know what you're looking at, it's not right. But if you don't know what you're looking at, like if you have no point of reference, you would never know it wasn't legit. So, and that caused quite a debate in that group, talking about how much of a model is okay to be 3D printed, how do you police that as a TO, and a lot of people got really, really shitty at even the remote possibility of having a single part of a model 3D printed, let alone whole models. And we were kind of talking about it in the group, and one of the guys has said, oh, every TO in the world will just ban you if you bring a 3D printed army. And I said to him, well, I'm a TO, and I've not banned anyone for a full 3D printed army, but that got me thinking, I don't think we've actually had a fully 3D printed army. We've had models that are 3D printed. And I think that this is a conversation that has to be had because it's not going to go away. And we've made it reasonably clear in the past on these live streams before, where if it's a great example is Gillian Platel's Keepers of Secrets that she brought for WATC. She had a genuine one, but she didn't want 3 of the same model. So she had the character Diablo from the video game Diablo. Someone had done a male version, which is the classic version, and they'd done a female version. So it's a big 4-armed demon lord, big spikes and tail and everything. She had it scaled to match the size of the Keeper of Secrets, had it 3D printed in resin, and painted it up on the right size base. It's the right height. Its silhouette's really good. And she went, can I bring this as Keeper of Secrets?
Yep.
Sure. So at that point, it's a third-party model, much in the same way that if you bring anything from Cromlech, Victoria Miniatures, any of the bits companies around the world that you can buy either part or full models of, we'd ask you to show it to us, which is what she did. She went, here's the model. I actually got to see the model before she asked me about it because I was out at OTP and talking to Emma about the terrain at the time, and she's gone, are you going to see Pete and Glenn anytime soon? I said, no, they are far away. And she went, oh, I'm printing this at the moment. She showed it to me. And in my brain, I went, oh, I know what that'll be. So I already knew that was coming. But I think that looking at the comments and stuff in the chat, a lot of the stress seems to come from not from the fact it's 3D printed, but from the fact it's intellectual property
Yeah.
being misappropriated and used. And it's not even the fact that I only paid 10 cents in resin for this and you paid $60 for that model. It's not even about the cost. It's about the ethics attached to it. And it's been an interesting conversation. So Timo says, I played against a fully 3D printed army in the last 30k skulls. The models were brought from Anvil Industries and printed, painted and based. I can't see what's wrong about that. And like I've just said, I think that we had some of the Anvil Industries models a couple of years ago as prizes that we got to give away. Mm-hmm. And yeah, on the surface, they're alternate sculpts of Space Marines and they do snipers and a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't have an intrinsic problem with any of that at all. It's that moment in time when you go, well, that's clearly an Adeptus Custodes model. Like, yeah, okay, there's little things, like the grill on the mouth might be different, or instead of having the Aquila with 2 lightning bolts, it might not do the lightning bolts because it doesn't render well, or whatever it is, but it's very clear what it is. And I think that that's, looking through all the comments, the intrinsic point that keeps coming up again and again and again isn't to do with using 3D prints. It's actually more to do with they're almost being viewed the same way as recasts because it's theft of IP.
Yep.
So it was interesting to kind of read all that because I thought, well, there are going to be, I guarantee there are players who played games at one of our events against 3D printed models that you would never have known they were 3D printed.
Yeah.
And look, we've had players suggest that, well, if you ban 3D print, you have to ban recasts. And I actually had a player, it was 2019, I think it was, come to me after a tournament and say, did you know that all of those are recasts? And I said, well, no, but knowing the player and looking at the army, my guess is they probably are. He said, we should ban all those. Or you should require receipts for Forge World. If you're going to use Forge World Army, you should have to supply your receipts with your army list. And I said to the player, how can you possibly do that? And he said, well, that you got your online thing. And I said, well, I've got Forge World models that go back to 1995.
Well, not only that, you've also bought things secondhand and
exactly,
you know,
and it's impossible to police.
It is impossible to police, and I think it's become. I just don't have the mental space at the moment to be able to debate this backwards and forwards enough with myself, let alone with you, in order to come up with something. Because where I keep coming back to is in general, if you're looking at a counts as not a proxy model, but something
it essentially is.
Yeah, I don't like using proxy models because I
that conjures up images of little green army men in place of Space Marines. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're using a different kind of model to, let's think it's proxy, but it's
use proxy.
Yeah. So when you're looking at proxy models or you're looking at different elements that are 3D printed that are for conversions or for different shoulder pads or whatever, different weapons, trying to get additional weapons because often the kits come with only 2 or 3 and actually you need 20.
Yeah, it's really common to see conversion parts 3D printed, which I actually don't have a problem with most of the time.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And as we've said, it is around that intellectual property and the fact that it is counterfeiting. It is.
It's a weird one for us. I mean, Timo's got a comment there. Isn't it more about alternative versus GW? As long as the alternate model is recognisable as what it represents, it's fine. Yeah, look, and we've always allowed alternate sculpts from other companies. We've never once said, no, it has to be a GW model.
Sorry, could you please close that fridge?
We've never had a situation, and like I've said to a couple of players, there's no...
This is why we normally do this outside in the dungeon, because it's like Piccadilly Station in here.
We've never had an incentive, I suppose, to even want to try and figure out how to police it.
No,
and this is the comment I made in the competitive group, and I've deliberately not said anything in the OBSEC group because I don't want to taint my opinions into the comments, which is why I've left it to tonight to talk about it and given it a couple of days for people to make their thoughts known. We don't have any incentive whatsoever to stop players attending, which is ultimately what trying to police this potentially does.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it. So while we've shared in the past our thoughts and views around it, it's it just becomes really difficult. It feels really big and probably bigger than it needs to. But where do you draw the line? So, we had some people who said, well, it's okay to have 1 or 2 models, but you wouldn't want a whole army. Well, what percentage of models is okay?
Yeah.
Or
and by the same token, if the answer is, say, it's 50%.
Yeah, what happens
what
if it's
52%?
Well,
and what happens as well if you go, well, I'm going to play Imperial Knights, all of my big knights that make up 1,000 points are 3D printed, and my little knights are cheap, and therefore I'll buy those second hand or whatever, or recast, and you'll never know the difference anyway.
Other comments were, well, so long as it's a good print, I'm okay with it. Well, what constitutes a good print? And
I've seen some bad prints.
Yeah, well, yes, most definitely. And, when we first started, we had a 3D printer that we were... And we purchased files to print terrain. But I hated them. Because you could see there's like 1 millimeter lines on everything. Are we going to...
0.4, but okay.
Well, sometimes it felt like 4 millimeters. I just didn't like them. Anyway, I digress.
It's come a long way since then.
It's come a really long way since then, but those printers are still around. Or people set the printing to low.
They set it to that to make it fast.
Yeah, to make it fast and to use less of the plastic and all of those kinds of things. So, what constitutes a good print versus a bad print?
Yeah.
And who's going to police that? And if we say that, well, you can't bring 3D prints, what happens if there is a 3D print? And okay, well, it's okay if you convert it. Well, what percentage of your model needs to be converted? Recasts aren't okay. Well, how are we supposed to check that? Because we're certainly not going to ask people to bring receipts. I'm not going to sit there with a pin drill and drill out models to see what comes out if we do.
I actually had a player suggest that drilling a hole in the underside of things to check the colour of resin to make sure if it was recast was a viable way of checking models.
Clearly that's ridiculous.
It is.
And also, there are multiple different colours of resin depending on how long it's been sat out in the dungeon because you desperately needed it and it's been in a plastic bag for the last 11 years.
Well, the resin's changed over the years depending on the time of manufacture, depending on the detail of the sculpt. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into what the resin looks like in the first place, let alone if it's aged.
Yeah, and we've had resin, where it has aged compared to things that you've got, even where it's been through a travel process, where it looks totally different to when you picked it up in person.
Heat and light change it and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, so, it just feels difficult and big.
Okay, so Isik says it applies to codexes and rules as well. Would you check if anybody legitimately purchased a codex from GW? In a way, we kind of do.
Yeah.
So... we say to people that we expect you to have a copy of any rules you are planning on using, and Battlescribe does not constitute a replacement for the rules, because if you ask me to come and make a ruling, I want to see a rule book.
I want to see a rule book.
I've been happy with players who've got photocopies of who was it? Someone used to Diffie used to do it all the time. He would get his Chaos Army, and he would basically take photocopies of just the pages that he wants to use, put it in a binder, so instead of flicking through 50 pages of data sheets, he's got the 6 data sheets he needs all in one spot.
Yeah.
That at least is a replication of a book that has to exist somewhere, and the fact that getting PDFs of the current codexes is a lot harder than it was in 8th edition gives me a little bit of credence to trust that. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure we have players who've come to tournaments without codexes and without stuff like that, and then they either know their stuff well enough to not ask or know where to borrow it from or whatever it happens to be. We don't actively engage and police it, but I think most of the players know that if they ask a question, our first response is,
where's your rulebook?
Show us the rulebook, show us the actual rule, not what you think it says, what it actually says. So we kind of do police it, but we don't at the same time. John says, one point I didn't see in the thread, if you 3D print a meta army that you couldn't or didn't want to buy, and you bring it to a tourney, it does change the overall results. 3D print a counterfeit army, I should add, rather than a third party. It was kind of hinted at. Mike Sloan kind of hinted at it. And as Pete pointed out, if you have a home printer... most of the to get a decent print, you're going to have a resin printer and drying station and cleaning station and UV setter and all the rest of it. I don't know that you could print, build, paint, and get on the table in a timely fashion enough before the army wasn't meta anymore, because most of those print beds are sort of 4 inches square, and while they're fast, they're not that fast.
Well, they certainly weren't when we were using them
No, and
6 years ago, so it's all changed.
And if you've got to
since
build like tanks or even dreadnoughts, anything remotely bigger than an infantry mod, it's going to take even longer because you have to print it in pieces.
we have to print it in pieces, and then the cleaning that goes with it.
Yeah, I think that...
Take my hat off to Emma and Dan from OTP.
Well, they definitely have bigger printers than what the
They
average
do.
person has at home.
They do, yes.
And they have a different cleaning station and all the rest of it. It's still a lot of work, don't get me wrong. But I think that if you are going to actively try and chase an army like that, you'd have to be really confident that it wasn't just going to get nuked into oblivion 6 months down the track, because like if it's a really expensive points-wise army, like if your models are 90 or 100 points a model and you only need like 20 of them, that's one thing. If you're printing an army where the models are 10 points a model and you need like 100 of them, that's another matter entirely.
Generally, the ones where you need 100 of... Oh, no, I take it back. I was going to say they're generally... Like, the smaller models are often cheaper, but actually Gene Steeler Cult Army is probably one of the most expensive armies.
Point for dollar is shocking for Gene Steeler Cult. Or then again, like I was looking today, I want to add some more Drakari to my Dark Elder, like to some of the Drakari I don't own to my army. And I was talking to one of the Weimar managers, and he said to me, I said, oh, can you get racks in? And racks are, I think, $55 or $60 for 5. And he said, look, probably, but don't. Here's another Games Workshop model from the Age of Sigmar range that instead of being $60 for 5, it's $110 for 20.
Yeah.
And what his suggestion was is buy 5 racks and then this box of 20, and for $150 I get 20 plus chain, like I end up with 25.
Yeah.
As opposed to less than 15. So and obviously then on top of that, you can potentially get them, like the box I'm talking about with 20 models is mail order only, but the racks I can get from, like say, Tactics or another provider where there's a discount attached to it. So, you know, there are ways around, like being creative with your modelling. Forge Orb ranges from grey to cream, doesn't it? For resin, yes, it does, and everything in between. I've got models that have come with yellow resin, and even Armor Cast was literally yellow. Racks are atrociously hard to come by. Yeah, Tom, exactly. That was the models I was looking at today. Imperium makes a good point. Yeah, look, the 3D... I actually saw someone say this today in the other thread. If I'm going to a tournament and I was never going to buy that model, and I 3D print it and bring it, it doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
My response to that is, well, it actually does.
Because you've got it.
You've got a 3D printed model, so you've taken someone's intellectual property for starters, and then you're using a model that you know that you want to use because it's awesome or for what, you know, and then you've tried to shortcut it to gain a benefit. And it's kind of like going the recast route in that regard. So, and this is the problem with it, is that it's easier to identify 3D print than it is recast. And really, if you're banning one, you need to ban the other. And that's the issue. Hello, dog.
All right, I've got some questions that came up on the other page. So, okay, there's still comments left.
How is printing a meta army going to skew the results differently from dropping $1,500 at GW? Because you wouldn't be bringing it otherwise. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are dedicated hobbyists, like... We've said it a few times that we don't condone or support any of the intellectual property stuff in regards to China cast or Russia cast or any of the recasting and the 3D printing. And my armies and my son's armies all fall into that same category. There's nothing there that's... I mean, there's secondhand stuff, but that secondhand stuff comes from places I know where it comes from, or they're models that... Like, I saw someone posted a photo going, oh, I finally got this metal version of this character, this Eldar character. And I said, oh, that's a recast. He said, no, it's metal. And I went, yeah, it never came out in metal. It only ever came out in Finecast, so it has to be a recast.
Yeah.
So, you know, as much as it's probably a pain, financially speaking, for us,
Yeah, it really
it's
is.
still it's still something that we don't support.
I'd really like to be less ethical. China cast is a lot cheaper.
Look, I've got 3D conversion parts.
Yeah.
But
again, that's different.
Yeah, the only things that I would be okay, ethically speaking, with recasting or 3D printing is stuff that's completely out of production. Because if I've got no other way of accessing that anymore, like if I can't buy it somewhere, then I feel like it's more of a grey area where I can go, well, if you sold it, I'd buy it from you.
Yeah.
But you don't sell it, and I can't buy it, so I'm going to access it.
And that was one of the things that somebody did bring up.
Yeah.
That it is quite difficult to buy things at the moment.
Yeah.
So does that change things? And it's difficult because I still think, well, it's the intellectual property.
I do like some of the chat that's going on here at the moment. It's really good.
I can't actually read it.
Someone's agreeing with me, so I always like when I see that.
I did see that, and I can see So Imperial. That's all I can read of that comment.
So basically, Isaac saying, so what about borrowing armies? That's another good point. You aren't purchasing the army and you are skewing the meta. You are and you aren't, because someone's bought it, and I don't lend my armies out to just anyone. It's a very rare occurrence where I'm a bit picky, to be perfectly honest. So
it's all right, he won't even lend one to me, as we've just heard.
No, not for a tournament.
Apparently I can't be trusted.
Nope.
Which I'm probably okay with, to be fair.
So, yeah, look, I mean, I suppose in theory that does skew results, but at the same time, I think there's less of a... Again, it comes back to the feels bad from across the table. If you're staring down a Sisters of Battle army, whether it's a Raging Heroes third-party army or whether it's a genuine Games Workshop army, the fact that your opponent has a painted version of that army across the table from you will have less feels bad, regardless of whether it's yours or someone else's, than if it was quite obviously a 3D printed or obviously recast army. Because if you have any of those ethical quandaries, then a lot of those get alleviated, and I think this is what the whole thing comes back to, is the ethics around it.
Yeah, and Luke's just saying, because I've moved forward so I can read it a little bit now, it doesn't change anything that makes the company worse off when they're already struggling, which I'm assuming is around the comment around, well, what happens if these models are less available, which a lot of the models are at the moment. And yeah, I totally agree with you, and again, I still have the same thoughts around the intellectual property, but I can see it from a player's perspective of thinking, well, I want to play this army, but actually I'm not physically able to. And that can be really tricky when there's, you go onto the Forge World website at the moment and there's out of stock, 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 out of stock. And it really is the exception to the rule that there's something that's in stock at the moment. And I totally understand that the world is in a very difficult situation with being able to have staff at work and being able to get production lines up and running and that kind of thing. I'm just saying that I'm aware that it makes it tricky for players who are trying to build an army and want to come to tournaments or want to play with friends, and actually they just can't buy the models.
See, the funny thing is, I know that we're talking about this ourselves from our perspective. I think in your own hobby groups outside of an organised play scenario, you're obviously going to do what your group will be happier to manage with.
Most definitely. And I know that when I was talking about proxies before, the reason that I struggle with using the term proxy is because I know you had a friend, and this is going back some years, and I've told this story before, but he would print out little pictures of whatever models and then stick them onto 5-cent pieces. So they were
green army men on 5-cent pieces, and
sometimes
and then he blue tacked the picture onto the army man, because otherwise they didn't stand up.
Sometimes it was on the back of a cereal packet, blue tacked onto a 5-cent piece.
3D printing parts or 3D printed parts on one or two models.
So I'm just finishing that thought. And he was doing that to work out what did he want to buy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then how did it work, and did it work the way he thought it would before he actually dropped the money to go and purchase it. But still, that was, you had that kind of social contract with him that was okay, and yet you had a different social contract with, for example, Brett, where nothing was allowed to go on the table unless it was fully painted. So, two ends of the spectrum there, but what worked for, when you were playing against the Green Army men with a Space Marine blue tack to his face, and against Brett's fully painted army to try and, I guess, spur each other on to get your armies painted and to get
Yeah.
them up to scratch. It's just different.
So there's a reference around the Forge World Death Riders where people are happy to 3D print or China forge them, but wouldn't be running them if they couldn't do that. And that's very true. I don't know what the Death Riders go for on Forge World. I'm sure they're out of stock at the moment anyway. We'll have a quick
All right.
look. So,
I think we probably need to wrap this up a little bit because we're in there's two schools of thought, and
I didn't
we
want
don't
to.
know how we.
I didn't want to leave it in a scenario where we put it out there and then didn't kind of explore it on this because
I would have been fine with not exploring it on this. It feels way too hard.
I'm just gonna here we go, Deathcore of Krieg.
Because the reality is that while this is what we believe ethically,
It's
don't
impossible
know how
to police. It's literally impossible to police.
And I really don't want to be in a situation where we have to, where people are calling us over to a table.
Wow. Okay. That's for one model.
Yeah.
Bloody hell. So the Death Riders of Krieg are 40 Australian dollars each.
Oh, excuse me, that says two.
That's
it's
number
Death Rider
2.
2. Right, sorry.
So the Death Rider detachment, which is listed as $530, and you get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So you get 16 and the character, which makes a legal detachment. And it's $530. People were fielding
And it's out of stock.
People were fielding 3 times that at WATC, at Masters. So you're talking about a $1,500, 700 point detachment.
Well, that makes Gene Stealer Cult look pretty darn affordable.
They're probably on parity there, yeah. So, and he's right that you wouldn't be running that if you tried to do that legitimately. Like, you might do over the course of several years when you're building that army up. You go, cool, I'm going to get my first unit of Death Riders. Here's 10 of them. I've just dumped $500 into that detachment. Because that is actually a $530 compared to $40 a model. That's a good discount to get 17 of them.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, it's been a really long week.
So when you get right down to it, you might go, yeah, I'm going to dump $500 and get my detachment of Death Riders.
Yeah.
And then a year later go, okay, I'm going to get my next, I'm going to build that detachment. And then but it's a rough one. John says, I know someone that just printed a Warhound and I think it's lame as F. I'm going to agree there.
We're just going to move past that.
Yeah. I don't mind if a person has a 3D party models in their army, but don't rip off IP.
Third party models.
You weren't tempted to compete in the Iron Man, Mike?
No, he wasn't, and he blamed it on me.
Yep.
Without actually speaking to me about it, he said, no, it's our wedding anniversary the next day. Emma won't be happy if I do it. What he actually meant was,
I'm too old.
That's a really long day. I'm too old to stand up and play for 5 games in a row.
I probably could do it, but to be fair...
And yeah, the whinging the next day would so not be worth it.
No. It was a tactical choice to say no to play it, and then we streamed Masters, and we've been mucking about, obviously, with the stream format now. And I said to Emma, how would you feel about going and streaming it instead and turning it into like a full day's worth of videos that we can commentate, we can have guests on. And I think that it feels better doing it that way.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting on to these questions. Richard wants to talk about ponies. I think we've covered that.
We've come back to Saddle Club.
Yeah. Gareth, with Orc Leaks cited, what would you expect for them to release for them?
I haven't seen any of the Orc leaks, to be fair. I've seen bits and pieces for some of the factions, but I don't remember seeing anything for Orcs for 40k. I would assume that, much like they've just done with Necrons, and I'm hoping they do with Dark Eldar and then obviously Craftworld down the track, that we're just going to see plastic kits phasing out the Finecast. Mm-hmm. So if anything, it'll be Commandos, Tank Hunters... Tank Busters, Commandos. I feel like there's another Finecast unit still lurking around in there, but I can't... And maybe the characters. But that's what I would be expecting. I don't know necessarily you'll get new units so much as... We'll shuffle the points around, we'll shuffle the rules around, and we'll give you a bunch of plastic stuff to replace the Finecast. Because I'd read somewhere that Finecast was meant to be gone by the end of this year for 2021. That's not going to happen. Or I assume it's not going to happen. But I would expect that'll be still the production plan, is that we don't want to be dealing with multiple mediums. We've got all these really expensive injection molds. Let's try and move away from fine cast and go to plastics. That's my guess.
Jono is saying that was a harsh reaction that I had towards his comment. No. The reaction that I had was not towards your comment. The reaction that I had was to try and stop Michael from commenting, because I sometimes get a little bit concerned about what may potentially come out of his mouth. And so that was my attempt to try and make sure that he remained somewhat professional. So with these...
I did.
Because I cut you off.
Yep.
So with these live streams, I'm sat here drinking wine. Michael often has some sort of alcoholic beverage, and we're doing it in the middle of our dining room, and I've stopped however many times because our kids have decided that they desperately need to go into the fridge and steal the minties. So this is about us sharing a bit of our personality and a bit of who we are, and a bit of our, the dog's been part of it. Dog's always part of it. There's quite often a bird going off and that kind of thing. So it's about us being a little bit a lot less professional, and a lot more just us hanging out and having a bit of a chat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is being recorded and it is going out there. And so I do kind of, sometimes when I think I know what he's going to say,
We've been together a long time.
That's it. So we're just about to celebrate our 17th wedding anniversary and 22 years together, because I can do the maths. So yes, I do often know what's going to come out of his mouth and think, we might cut that off. So, just in case. So it definitely wasn't meant to be a harsh response to your comment. I was just making sure that I was, keeping myself safe with what he might come out with.
Yeah.
Swan has asked what will happen with the Inari.
They
will continue to be strength after strength.
They haven't been for...
I know, but you never know.
There's one or two ways I'll see that go for, and I think now any plans they had to do my second option have been pushed just because of what's been going on. I think
John is saying he loves the wine, which is great, because I'm just about to go grab some more because I've got the bottle on the bookshelf behind me.
I think the likely scenario for the Inari will be, I think the long-term plan would, they want to sell models, let's be honest. I think moving them to like a Gene Steel, a Colt, or a Harlequin-sized Codex with like one or two options in each slot feels like the next natural progression in that army. Mm-hmm. However, that requires 5 to 10 new plastic kits, design work, all the other bits and pieces that go into that, in a time when they're struggling to maintain basic supply chains. So I think the more likely scenario is that they'll just kind of go la 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 Inari, la la, yep, and we'll get through the next 2 to 3 years before they kind of go, yeah, we're going to do something with this now other than what you've already got. John says he loves the horse pick today.
Oh my goodness, I love that horse pick. And I was so disappointed that nobody else shared photos of their...
No, but you know what? Seeing a horse with like a giant bra on its face probably made a lot of people smile.
I have to see whether or not I can share that other little video of the...
yeah, okay.
It's really inappropriate, but that's okay. Jono asked what time? About 8:45. So glad you're here. Jack said, what about the Las Vegas not open?
It was an interesting one. I didn't get to watch a lot of the games, but basically it was a bunch of the personality groups in America got together, wrote some lists, and kind of did a knockout event with other people running these lists. One of my friends, JT, he does, it's not Tabletop Titans, Pro Tabletop. He submitted the Drukhari list that did really well. But, I mean, we only got back on Friday night from our little getaway, and then by Sunday...
That's why the podcast was late. It did go out yesterday.
Yeah, it went yesterday. And then by the time that we kind of got ourselves sorted on the Saturday, and then everything happened Sunday, I haven't really even bothered to look at the responses. I know that Eric Lathuris' Grey Knights did really well with a very controversial combo, which I can explain if anyone needs that explanation. I'm not going to do it now unless someone needs it, but...
Okay, no, move on. Because we've been going for an hour and 5, we're wrapping up.
Isaac says he would have laughed at your horse meme if he hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, you got to remember, Isaac, this is all new for us. We're day 3 of lockdown, you know?
Look, Isaac sent me a photo today of, I think it was from the ABC, with a bunch of spiders on the walls. And he said, "Oh, this is the problem with Australia." And I sent him back the one of the giant huntsman on the side of the blue car.
Yeah.
And then the one that we had at the holiday house. And said, "Oh, no, these are just the two that I've seen recently at home."
So with the one, we went away just like 2 hours north of where we are. So we stayed up there for a couple of days. And it was quite funny because I'm in Facebook groups from all over the world, similar to what you are. And somebody posted a photo of it was like a random house spider. And so they posted it, and then they said, "Oh, watch out, all the Australians are going to come in with that's not a spider, this is a spider." And I just said, well, look, this is the spider that's on the wall of the holiday house where we are, it was probably...
It was
not
the size
quite
of
my whole hand.
Well, I worked it out. If I spread my hand out, it would have been the size of my palm.
Yeah. So, relatively small compared to some of the huntsmans that we have. And it was quite funny because we were there and Michael said, "Oh, I think I might be thirsty." Gets it out a bowl of water for the huntsman. So there's Americans who are going, "Oh my God."
Yeah. They're fine. The good thing about those for Isick and for anyone else from outside of Australia is the huntsmen kill other spiders, the dangerous ones. So you see one in the house, you kind of go, "It'll be fine."
It's all good, providing they don't jump on you, and they do actually jump.
Yeah, they do have a decent jump. Yeah,
and they jump on your face, and I freak out with that. I'm with you when they jump on me, and I think, oh no, I'm all friends with you, but that's probably a bit much.
See you, Jono.
Okay, so anything else from the Las Vegas Open?
Las Vegas no open.
Well, whatever.
No, look, I haven't really had a chance to look at the lists that closely, to be fair. Mm-hmm. So I might see if I can get hold of JT and see if I can bring him on sometime around the Dracari Codex release and have a chat to him, because that's obviously around the corner now. And I might even... I've got an idea for an episode now.
Okay. And also reviews...
Grimdark memes. That's it's a Reddit thing that I haven't looked at.
Okay, so
Reddit's a weird one for me. I always feel like it's...
I remember, we're old, okay? We don't do Reddit.
Well, I actually have a Reddit account.
Yeah.
And...
I've got an Instagram and a Twitter account too, and I haven't used those.
I do occasionally post on Reddit. It's not very often.
I occasionally post on Twitter and Instagram, but...
But yeah, it's one of those ones where you go, okay, where am I investing my time on social media? Yeah. That's not something that we do a lot of. But I'll have a look at it, and next time maybe we'll talk about it. Mm. If anyone has any other questions, sing them out now, and we'll happily answer them for you. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping up.
Yep, I'm just checking, make sure there's no other questions here.
Josh says, "Whoops, it's supposed to be r/grimdank."
I don't know what that is either.
I will have a look at that one as well, Josh. Fair enough. How many of you would be interested in getting branded masks, like proper washable, reusable ones? Because if they do come out at the end of the week saying that we're going to have to keep wearing them in the short to medium term, then I'm definitely going to be looking at buying a few. Tom says JT's first game against Ultramarines is up in full on the Play On tabletop. Oh, cool. I'll have to go and watch that. I've known him for a few years now, actually. I met him in person for the first time in 2017, though, when I went to the LVO. It took a long time to find him, but we eventually found him, and I found him drinking an entire jug, you'd put it on a blender. It was one of those full of pina colada.
Okay, Josh...
Out of the jug.
Josh has just asked, and this is a question that I can answer. Josh has just asked, how bad was my decision to sign up for the Ironman as my first 40k event?
Jesus
I
Christ.
would say, on a scale of 1 to totally insane, you are heading right the way that way, my friend.
my only suggestion to you, Josh,
I
is...
like your enthusiasm and your dedication.
Any of these big events, and I use the term big not just to talk about player count, but anything that steps outside of that sort of 3 to 4 game 1 day format, I feel like you go to a 2-day tournament, it's trial by fire. You go to something where it's 5 games over the course of 15 hours. By game 3 you'll be going, oh my god.
Yeah, look. In fairness, I'm joking when I say that you're all the way at that end of the scale. I'm not. I'm serious. But so in the last podcast that we just put out, I did talk about what a great learning opportunity it is to go to an event where you have, so I was speaking about 7 games over 2 days that we had for Masters. And I think to do 5 games over 1 day, it is a big day, don't get me wrong. I think regardless of how many games you have in 1 day, the last game for any event is always one that you are completely exhausted for.
Yep.
To concentrate for that many hours is difficult, but it is an amazing learning opportunity to have 5 games back to back where you get to pick up different tips and to learn different things about your army in every single game and then apply them in the next game. And even though you're playing against different armies for each, so it's not going to be a replication where you can actually consolidate whatever it was that you learned in that, you're still picking things up and you are still consolidating your learning because it's transferable. So, I mean, I do think that it's
bold.
It's bold. That's a good word, yes.
My suggestion to you, if you haven't already submitted your army list, and I think from memory you've still got a few days to do that, I would be remembering that it's 2.5 hour rounds, and be building an army that I am confident that I can finish the games in, because there is a penalty for not finishing from memory. So I'd be looking at it and going, okay, I'm not going to bring my 200 model Genestealer Colt all infantry neophyte army. That might be a bit ambitious for 2.5 hours, so I'm going
Partly because you have to move it, but your opponent has to know how to oppose that.
Yeah.
And so that can make that tricky.
And that's exactly right, is that I'd be taking a slightly safe... I'm assuming we're probably going to end up with, out of the 32 players going, I'm assuming there's going to be like 12 Death Guard, and a bunch of Space Marines, and then the crazies who bring other stuff. And
which is where Michael would be.
Yep, absolutely.
If he was brave enough to go, which he's not.
No. I'm really looking forward to streaming it. I'm really looking forward to being part of the day, not as a TO, not as a player, but also not as a spectator, like being involved at the same time.
Yeah, look, I am as well, but I really wish we could host the final sort of around lunchtime.
Instead of like 9 o'clock at night.
That's when I come into my own. So this time of night, admittedly, I think the wine is hindering, but you know, I'm often going, gosh, I'm exhausted, and yawning away through our lives. So
and I'm waking up.
Yeah, that's
great.
So I'm not sure about the time of night for that last game, but gonna give it a good shot.
No, look, as long as you're confident in the army that you've got, and you know how to play it, and you're feeling comfortable in knowing how, like, going, okay, I know what secondaries, or roughly what secondaries I'm going to take. I know roughly how the synergies need to be worked out when I deploy, and you're confident in that side of your own army, you should be fine. That's probably my suggestion for you.
Bree actually had a really great system that she took to Masters.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
I saw the spell cards.
The ones that she'd handwritten?
Yeah.
That actually knocked 15 minutes off. And I had wanted for us to go over there to talk with her about it, and then we could...
I might try and get her to send a photo through to it.
Yeah, and with an explanation and how...
or we can even record something and put it up as a short episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
Okay.
when we're not recording. But yeah, I think that having tips and tricks like that as ways that you can speed it up can be really useful.
Luke
as well.
says, if it's not too expensive, I might.
I'm assuming that's around the face mask, so...
Oh, okay, cool.
That. And
Under,
Mortarion and...
Mortarion and the Dark Angel. Okay, Mortarion, some fun facts. It takes nearly 1,000 lasgun shots to kill Mortarion. It's the same with bolters, to be fair. Oh, it's not. No, it's not quite. A standard bolter.
Totally doable.
A standard bolter is about 986 shots. As soon as you go to the Astartes, like the Primaris ones, that number comes down a little, but it's still in the hundreds. I worked out it's nearly 60 fusion pistol shots from my Harlequins if I ran fusion pistols. He's a tough nut to crack. He's not going to be an easy kill for just about anything. Like I was talking with someone. 15 eradicators don't do it. Like, they'll do it, but you kind of clenched up while you're rolling those dice, hoping for the best in parts of it. So I think Mortarion's probably going to be quite dominant for the next couple of months until everyone kind of establishes the fact that he's 500 points out of 2,000 and can't be everywhere, and he has some limits in place, the biggest of which I've actually sent an email off to try and get some clarification on, but I'm not going to talk about it now because I don't want to give anything away and make the guys at Iron Man try and figure it out. The Dark Angels Codex looks really promising. I really like the fact they brought back Weapons of the Dark Age. the hype around objective secured Terminators and objective secured Ravenwing, I think, is a little bit overstated, to be fair. I think the Ravenwing of the two are the better in terms of having objective secured on a mobile, durable bike platform as opposed to Terminators. But at the same time, I was saying to someone today, when you have 5 Terminators that are OBSEC, those models aren't holding an objective because they're OBSEC. They're holding it because they've wiped everything else off of it. Yeah. And if your opponent is coming to contest it without killing them, they're going to come with more than 5 models with OBSEC in the first place. So I think the clutch moments of Terminators with OBSEC is going to be in turn 4 or turn 5 when all of a sudden you have to divert more resources to clear them. Whereas with the bikes in the late game, you're going to be able to move and advance them across multiple objectives to try and then put pressure on other parts of the table. So I think of the two, the bikes are going to be the better option. But the fact that the Deathwing Knights don't get it, and the Black Knights for the Ravenwing don't get objective secured also limits them. So, but no, look, I think I've seen a few people going, oh, you just play Dark Angels now because, they can shoot in combat and they can do this and they can do that. It all comes with the other hang-ups of being Space Marines. So, yeah, I think it's probably the most powerful of the Space Marine supplements, but at the same time, I in the Eldar group, one of the guys went, oh, well, the Dark Angels are so broken. Eldar should just get a smite that if it goes off, it does D6 mortal, but if it goes off with the 11 plus, like a super smite, it should just kill whatever I target. And I went, no, that's terrible. And that's unfortunately what the knee-jerk reaction is from a big section of the vocal internet community, because they can't look at it objectively. They're looking at it going, I can't do that, therefore it's... and that's a shame, because the book actually looks quite good. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, because I do actually have a Dark Angels army.
Oh, there's a surprise.
It's from 2003, so it's not anywhere remotely competitive.
Last comments, because I've run out of one. That relic that makes...
Invol's better than 4+ or 5+ is pretty damn strong. It will be, yeah, but again, it can't be everywhere. And there are when characters run those sorts of relics, you just put a target on their heads. So... take the Harlequins, for example. You go, okay, cool, that's going to reduce any invul save better than a 5 to a 5. Okay, cool. At that point, the Harlequins have the mobility to actually get in there and just kill that character before he even swings. So, I do think things like... I saw the Harlequin community freak out over Null Zone because it's a 6-inch aura that turns off invuls. My response to the Harlequin community was kill the Librarian, and the problem goes away, and they have the tools to do that. So I think that it's a very strong one. There'll be some armies that hate it. Custodes, for example, are going to loathe that relic, because they want to be up close to do all their work, and if you can turn on their invols down to a 5-up from a 3-up, that's going to hurt them. But you also have to be able to when you build your army, you have to be able to leverage that, and be able to deal the damage when they're being affected, which is part of the problem when you're trying to combo the army. Josh says, thanks guys, I appreciate your appreciation of my insanity. Fingers crossed the event goes ahead and I have strength to paint 60 guardsmen.
Okay, actually, when I read that, because I don't have my glasses on, I thought it said, fingers crossed, I have the strength to print 60 guardsmen. I was like, no! I did read it said paint.
We will be there, Josh. I'll be there all day. Emma will be down in the final game, because she promised she would.
I did. And I have worked out that possibly I might pop in at lunchtime and get fed, and then pop in at dinner time and get fed as well.
So come and say hi. We'll be behind the cameras and laptop and all the rest of it.
Generally wearing something that's bright orange. And...
No, I'll be in my red polo to look professional in there.
Oh, will you?
Yeah.
You're going to try and look professional.
Well, I'm doing my zombie apocalypse stained shirt, but, it's home, so it's fine. John says pretty glad my Shadow Sword is ready for Mortarion.
I just say pretty flag.
Okay. He's not, man. The Shadow Sword actually really struggles, but I won't give you the numbers on that because it'll make you really sad. Otherwise, everyone, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah,
I mumbled that really badly. If you haven't checked it out already, there is a nearly 4-hour episode that we published for the podcast yesterday around Masters. It's not just about Masters, though. It's also about some of the upcoming tournaments and some of the conversations that we have around how to score sportsmanship, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there.
It's a meandering episode, isn't it?
It is 3 hours and 45 minutes. It's the longest episode we've ever done. So you can get that on Spotify, on iTunes, on all the podcast places you can find it. You can also just listen to it straight off the website if you feel the urge.
We're aiming for our 100th episode to go for 6 hours straight.
Well, I'm going to try and... I'm actually starting to organise interviews for it now, so we can do a big bumper episode, but it won't be us talking for 6 hours. Or it will be, but it'll be recorded over multiple days, rather than us sat there for half a day doing it. Anyway, guys, take care.
We will see you... I think actually the next time you will see us will be at Ironman.
Yep. And we're still crossing our fingers that will go ahead as normal. So we'll find out. As soon as we hear anything, we will let everyone know as well.
Yeah, we should know by Friday.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, take care.
See you guys.